Hello, welcome to Jason the Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you here in my bedroom in the great state of Kansas. And in this video, we're covering 1975 in music. What happened in 1975 as far as what big albums came out that year, what were the best-selling albums, what albums won awards, and also what big events happened that year in the music industry. Anyways, I try to do these videos covering these years as me and my friends are going through our top 10 albums of each year. We have already done our top 10 albums of 75 and 76, so I'm trying to catch up with those and talk about a little bit. I like to research and discuss like what happened this year, what things do you need to know about music in a short amount of time. So it's hopefully somewhat educational on what was big this year. First, something I haven't been doing, but I wish I would have been doing, I should have been doing, that I'm trying to do now, is that I want to list kind of the big albums came out. Just kind of note, these are albums that are considered either, the ones I wrote down, either considered ones that I know about that I think are really good, or that critics think are really good, or sold really well, or some of my friends think are really good albums. So these aren't necessarily my favorite albums, but albums that I think are of note that maybe you should either take, if you want to get into music, listen to these albums and you'll get a little better sense, and you'll just get a better sense of 1975 as a year, what was going on musically in 1975. So here's, in no particular order, some albums I think to note. We got Blood on the Tracks by Bob Dylan, Fly By Night by Rush, Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin, their big double album, Between the Lines by Janis Ian. This has her kind of one big hit song on it, 17 or something like that. I think it's what's mostly known for. Katie Lied by Steely Dan. Toys in the Attic by Aerosmith, definitely one of their biggest albums. Kind of the first really huge album that they came out with. Diamond and Rust by Joan Baez. Yeah, it's definitely her biggest album that she's known by. I put Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Band by Elton John. I mean, Elton John's just on fire in this mid-70s period. Every album's like a must-listen to. Venus and Mars by Wings. Though I'm not a big fan of it, I know a lot of people that are fans of Paul McCartney put this as one of their favorite albums. It does have Listen to What the Man Says, amazing off of there. Gorilla by James Taylor. I don't know how big this album is, but it's one of my favorite albums of the year, and it's my favorite James Taylor album. It does have the big hit, How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You, and also Mexico is really great anyways, but really good one if you want to check out James Taylor. One of These Nights by Eagles, of course, being a big Eagles fan, this is one of their best albums, I think. Definitely a must. Obviously, One of These Nights is on the album. A lot of other great stuff, I think. I'm forgetting exactly what's all on that, but Main Course by Bee Gees. I haven't said it, Bee Gees kind of hit or miss band for me. This is definitely one of their better albums I've heard from Bee Gees. Fleetwood Mac by Fleetwood Mac. Yeah, the first album where we get Buckingham and Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham, Steve Nicks. This album's huge because of that, and it really changes the band forever to becoming what we know them mostly today. Their big hits came out of this era. Starting with this album's huge for them. It has like stuff like Landslide and Over My Head and a lot of other big ones. A lot of big songs on this album. Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. Yeah, this is definitely considered his best album, probably his best-selling album. This is definitely one where critics put this towards the top of any list. It's the one Bruce Springsteen's mostly known by, mostly because Born to Run is probably the biggest song as well. Face the Music by Electric Light Orchestra. I don't know if this is a big one, but I'm a big fan of ELO, and this was an excellent album. It does have a couple good, really good, kind of well-known songs. I think Evil Woman, I think, is on here, and Strange Magic. Really good stuff. Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. Yeah, another huge one by Pink Floyd. And they got another big one coming up also this decade. But a nice, almost like follow-up to Dark Side of the Moon. I'm not a big fan of it. Wish You Were Here is a great song, but I know a lot of Pink Floyd fans put this like number one on their list. Wind Song by John Denver. This is a personal one for me. I'm a big fan of John Denver, and this was a really good John Denver album amongst a bunch of really good John Denver albums. Calypso is an amazing song. Who by Numbers by The Who. I put that on there, even though it's probably not considered one of their big albums by most Who fans. It's one that I really like, so I put it on here. Still Crazy After All These Years by Paul Simon. Definitely one of Paul Simon's biggest albums he put out. Of course, Still Crazy After All These Years, one of his biggest songs. And we'll talk about other things about that album. It was pretty huge this year. Definitely marked him as one of the best singer-songwriters, of all time, especially this decade. And also Rock of the Westies by Elton John, another Elton John album that's kind of well-known by Elton John fans. And then, of course, A Night at the Opera by Queen. That's the Queen's biggest album. Really set the stage for how big that band's going to be with Bohemian Rhapsody. And that album is obviously huge. You're My Best Friend also was a big hit as well on the radio. But yeah, it's definitely a must for anybody to listen to. It's a must Queen album. And then I finish off with TNT by AC/DC. Don't know much about AC/DC, but this seems to be a lot of these albums AC/DC fans love. This is before they changed singers. I forget the name of the singer, but again, I'm not a big fan. But TNT, I know, was a big song for them. But anyways, so those are the albums that I've listed that are kind of the big albums to note that, yeah, like I said, either I like, my friends like, or critics like, or just general people like. Anyway, but let's get into what was the 10 best-selling albums in 1975. What were people buying? Would you believe number one, Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd? Yeah, they're number one with Dark Side of the Moon. Is one of their greatest selling albums of all time, period. But yeah, Wish You Were Here, again, Pink Floyd was very, very popular evidently at this time. Even though their albums aren't necessarily commercial, they're very almost prog rock style, I would say. Psychedelic rock, prog rock, I don't know, mixture in there. Yeah, people love that album. Number two, we got Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin. A lot of Led Zeppelin fans love this album. I hear this as their favorite. Funny, I don't like Physical Graffiti. I think it has a couple good songs, but it's a double album, so there's a lot of really bad songs on that album for me, personally. Actually, Kashmir is great. That's the big known song with the iconic guitar riff. But I know a lot of Led Zeppelin fans, like I said, put this number one, their favorite Led Zeppelin album, because if you like Led Zeppelin, why not go for the double album that has the most Zeppelin songs? But yeah, it did very well. Obviously, they're very popular this time. Number three, we have Toys in the Attic by Aerosmith. Like I said, this is definitely like the first really huge album for them. I think it's like their third album. It has Sweet Emotion, I think, and Walk This Way. So it has two huge hits on here for them. Number four, we have Alive by Kiss, which is a big live album by Kiss. I'm not a big Kiss fan, so I don't know much about it. I just know it's one of the big live albums that's done here by Kiss. Number five, Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. Like I said, this was huge album for Bruce Springsteen. I don't know if this is the first big one for him. I can't think of what he did before this. I don't know what he did before this. This is kind of the album, because then after this, he puts out some other big albums from this. But yeah. Number six, Fleetwood Mac by Fleetwood Mac. Like I said, really put them in a different kind of is very pop-oriented direction, and it produced huge hits thanks to Lindsey Buckingham joining in and writing some really huge songs on that album. Number seven, we have History, America's Greatest Hits by America. So you always get these compilation albums, these greatest hits albums in these lists. So yeah, America, didn't know they would sell that well with the greatest hits, but obviously they have some big ones with Horse with No Name, Sister Golden Hair, You Can Do Magic, great stuff. Number eight, we have Chicago 9, Chicago's Greatest Hits, which I do own that album. It's one of the few albums I own on this list, actually. I don't own too much albums on this list, but Chicago 9, yeah. It's early Chicago, because Chicago just started in 69, I think. So we're talking just 6 years into them, but they've been putting out double albums almost every year up to now, with 1, 2, and 3. And then 4 was like a live album, then 5, 6, 7, 8 as well. So they're putting out a lot of albums in a short amount of time at this point. So it's crazy that in such a short amount of time they have so many hit songs to make it. And it's a great album. It's definitely got some of the early hits. There's so many other great hits coming in the future though. So it's not all their hits, it's just really early stuff with them when they're more the jazz rock band. Number 9, Night at the Opera by Queen. Like I said, yeah, this is the Queen album to listen to and to get. Obviously, I got this album. Obviously it's a huge album with my friends. We're all big Queen fans, so I guess I'll spoil it. We all had number 1. It was our favorite album of the year, Night at the Opera. So that's how much we loved it as a group. And then number 10, we've got Greatest Hits by Cat Stevens. So another Greatest Hits, this time Cat Stevens. I don't know if he's putting much out at this point. I mean, Tea of the Tillerman was great, and there's another one I'm going to forget, but, Peace Train is amazing. Wild World, whatever. Those are the 2 big hits from him. Anyway, so those are the 10 best-selling albums of 75. Let's look at what was winning the Grammys, and I like to think, were these good choices? We'll see. The winner is Still Crazy After All These Years by Paul Simon. Like I said, huge album. He already won for Bridge Over Troubled Waters with Simon Garfunkel in 1970. So the second time that Paul Simon basically was a part of the Grammy Album of the Year. So he's definitely very popular. And it's funny because this was the one year in like 4 years that Stevie Wonder didn't put an album out. Because Stevie Wonder won the 2 years before, and he's going to win the next year. Spoiler alert. So it's funny. It's one of those funny times where Paul Simon said he won it, and he said thank you to Stevie Wonder for not putting an album out. And it was funny because next year Stevie Wonder won again. So Stevie Wonder was just winning every time he put an album out. When he didn't, Paul Simon was winning. So obviously very popular at the Grammys. Like I said, Still Crazy After All the Years and 50 Ways to Leave My Lover were kind of the 2 big hits. For me, it's a very slow-moving, boring album, and I like Paul Simon. I don't know, a lot of these solo albums I haven't really been into too much with Paul Simon. I don't know. I prefer his Simon Garfunkel stuff personally, but yeah, still it's a big album for him. Also nominated, we got Between the Lines by Janis Ian. That really surprised me. As far as I know, she's a one-hit wonder with At 17, which is a great song, amazing song. Hope that got nominated for like a Song of the Year or something. And then she didn't really do anything else that I could think of after this, but she had that one big hit. But it was enough to put this album, and it wasn't an album I remember too much about. I don't even know if I heard it or not. I think I probably listened to it, and I did put it in my top 10 or my honorable mentions. But anyways, Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Band by Elton John, of course. Again, it's a decent album. It's not one of my favorite Elton John albums, but again, Elton John's just putting out so much good stuff. And I'm forgetting on top of my mind, I know there's like a big song on this album that's like, he had like 1, maybe 2 big hits on this album. Then we got Heart Like a Wheel by Linda Ronstadt, which this surprised me because this wasn't in the, I didn't even put it in my notable albums. I forgot to put that one in there. I guess I should have since it got nominated for a Grammy. Yeah, early Linda Ronstadt. It's funny, I heard an album from her in the 80s I really like. And this is 1975, and the one I listened to I think was like late 80s. So I'm like, man, I think Linda Ronstadt's not even putting out her best material until in the 80s that I've heard. This is early Linda Ronstadt. She does have some great stuff, though. And I'm not sure what's on this album, but interesting that she got in here. That's the big surprise to me. And then we got One of These Nights by Eagles. Yeah, amazing album. And I wish I can remember on top of my mind who was on there. I get it mixed up with On the Border, because I don't know those albums real well, though I love both albums. Obviously, One of These Nights is on there. I don't know if Take It to the Limit's on there, or Lying Eyes, something like that. I know there's like at least three huge hits on the album, but it's another one where, gosh, the Eagles, just the harmonies are amazing. And every album they put out was like number one, I think. It was like a bunch of number ones in a row. I think every album they put out was like number one except for the last one. Something crazy like that. Anyways, but yeah, looking at it, man, I'm not crazy about Still Crazy After All These Years, but yeah, I don't mind that winning because I like Paul Simon. So it's like, okay, that's fine. It's not one of my favorite Paul Simon albums, but what maybe should have been in there? I mean, of course, I would have. Yeah, I mean, Night at the Opera, like, how do you not nominate that? I mean, I don't think the Queen got nominated for any Grammys. I feel like they just got shut out, which is crazy because they put out some of the best music in the 70s and even in the 80s. So, I mean, why not put Night at the Opera? That should be here, and that should have won the album of the year, personally, for me. but it should have been nominated. I mean, it's such a iconic album, such a monumental album, and really put Queen on the map, I think. So it's crazy that's not in there. Especially when we got, like I said, Janis Ian and Linda Ronstadt. I don't feel like those two belong in here. Maybe I'm crazy for saying that, but Elton John, like, that's not his strongest album, so I wouldn't even put that in there. One of These Nights, I do love that album, so I would totally be okay with Eagles being here. Obviously, Wish You Were Here, you would think should be in there since it was the best-selling album of the year. Toys in the Attic, again, monumental album for Aerosmith, maybe should have been. Born to Run, for goodness sakes. Maybe that'll get nominated next year. I always forget this. I'll see next year, and some of those albums will get nominated in the next year because Grammys do it weird, where the album that comes out that year doesn't get nominated for that year. It might get nominated 2 years from that year. So we'll see. Hopefully those albums will get nominated. Fleetwood Mac should be nominated. I mean, there's a couple of those. So I shouldn't get too mad yet because we'll see what happens in '76 if any of those albums come forward. Anyways, all right. Now we're gonna end with the big events that happened in 1975 that I've written down. So start with March 21st. Alice Cooper begins his solo career with elaborate stage production. Yeah, Alice Cooper, all the way to 75. It's crazy. It was that long ago he started, and he's still doing it today, I think. He's very theatrical. I know people are fans of his albums. I think he has a terrible voice. I don't get why anybody listens to his music. School's Out for the Summer is a catchy song, and it's fun because when you're a kid, you love summer. Besides that, I don't think he had that many hits. But he did have that great stage presence. He had the character. He had this very horror, gothic character with the makeup, the hat, the snake, the stage production. Anyway, so it all kind of starts around this time. April 7th, Ritchie Blackmore quits Deep Purple to form the group Rainbow. Deep Purple, of course, huge, with Machine Head and other stuff. And Blackmore, great guitar player. Rainbow, not a band I knew that much about, except for my friend Briar. In fact, they put an album out this year called Rising, which Briar put as his favorite album of the year, I think. 76, I guess that's the next year coming up. But so they're kind of very heavy metal, basically. I would say they're kind of a heavy metal band. Not a big fan of them, but people that like that love Rainbow. April 24th, Pete Ham, founder of the group Badfinger, is found hanged, ruling suicide at age 27. So, yeah, another young artist dead, either by suicide or drug overdoses. That seems to happen a lot in this time period. Again, 27 seems to be the golden age for a lot of these artists. And what happened with Badfinger is such a sad thing because they had some huge hits coming out, but their manager kind of screwed them over and kind of left them without any money, and they wanted to go into the, to produce or to record some more music. They had music to record. They're like, hey, we need it because we need money because, we're not making any money right now. Our manager kind of screwed us over. And so they couldn't even get in. They wouldn't even let them get into the studio to record new music anyways. So they were all struggling, even though they had, like I said, all these huge hits. And I know Pete Ham, he was I think newly married, and he bought a new house. And then all this happened, and he got really depressed. And I think he hanged himself in his garage anyways. So, man, what a sad ending to, a young potential. I mean, has so much potential at this point. Unfortunately, the other guy that I think was in the band that started the band also commits suicide 10 years later. So I think it's a very tragic story, Badfinger, anyways. And yeah, that happened this year. May 1st, the Rolling Stones debut with new guitarist Ronnie Wood. I forget who quit, but their other guitar player quit, and so then Ronnie Wood is recruited as a new guitar player, and I believe still plays with them today, if I remember right. Anyways, I don't know much about. I'm not a big Rolling Stones guy, but someone else can tell more about that. Obviously, you have Keith Richards. Is always going to be their lead guitarist. I guess Ronnie Wood's more their rhythm guitar player. June 30th, Cher and Greg Allman get married. Yeah, I think in a previous one I talked about how Sonny and Cher get divorced. This great partnership, and of course, they made a lot of great music. Yeah, Cher goes on and marries Greg Allman from the Allman Brothers Band, a great guitar player. Anyways, I think they even make an album together at some point. All right, August 4th, Robert Plant and wife are injured in a car accident. And it takes a while for him to kind of get over that. That hurts him. In fact, I think Physical Graffiti maybe, or the album after that, he like is in a wheelchair. Like he's almost like forced into the studio and has to sing sitting in a wheelchair. That's how messed up he was in the car accident. I think luckily his wife survived as well, but it was definitely a big hit for Robert Plant. August 23rd, Peter Gabriel leaves Genesis. Yeah, Peter Gabriel, the original singer of Genesis, and goes on to have a very successful solo career. They make Lamb Lies on Broadway. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which is this crazy double album, a kind of a rock opera of some sorts that makes no sense. It does have Copper Crawlers, which I think is my favorite Genesis song. It's a great song. Besides that, it's a hard album to listen to if you're not into that kind of music. And it's all Peter Gabriel's. He wrote like I think all the songs, and it was all his arrangements and his idea. It was like this big, very I don't know what to say. I can't think of the right word. Epic's not quite the right word. I don't know if it's a risk, but it was definitely grandiose kind of album. But he wasn't getting along with the band. In fact, he wasn't there a lot of times when they had to rehearse or they had to, put down tracks for the album. So there's a lot of animosity because between, I think, him and the rest of the band. And after they made that album, I think maybe did a tour, he was like, yeah, I'm done. I can't. He didn't want to be with the band anymore, so he leaves. And I do believe they get a certain drummer to take over named Phil Collins. So, and Phil Collins, I hear, is not too bad of a singer, so they might be okay. But definitely a huge, at first probably a huge, hit on them. And I know there's a lot of Genesis fans that prefer again, Peter Gabriel only made like not that many albums, I don't think, before he left. So Phil Collins probably made more albums with Genesis, but people who love that early prog rock days love the Peter Gabriel stuff more than the Phil Collins stuff, which is more pop oriented. But yeah. September 29th, singer Jackie Wilson suffers heart attack while performing. He survives, but is not the same physically. Yeah, Jackie Wilson, really good singer. I think I listened to some of his stuff in the early 60s, and I didn't think his albums were necessarily that good, but I think I put one of his albums in my top 10, I think, maybe of 1960 or something like that, and if I remember right, and I thought he had a good voice anyways. But yeah, didn't know this about him, had a heart attack while he was singing on stage, and he survived, but yet, it affected him for the rest of his life and career. October 7th, John Lennon wins his legal battle with New York to not be deported. I don't know a lot about this details, but there was this whole conspiracy thing, or maybe not conspiracy, but I know they did a documentary, I think, on this even about, John Lennon. Of course, John Lennon's very liberal, and so they think maybe, the government's trying to get rid of him because of his politics. He was very political. Just listen to New York Minute, or whatever. That album, that really terrible album that he made with Yoko Ono. But yeah. We're not done with John Lennon, though. October 9th, John Lennon and Yoko Ono have their only child, Sean. John's second child after Julian. And this kind of is a huge deal for John as he really takes a break from music to stay home and kind of see Sean grow up, or try to, before, of course, he passes away 5 years later. But when Julian was born in the 60s with Cynthia, his first wife, he wasn't around. He wasn't much of a father to Julian. He wasn't around to raise him. He was, with the Beatles and all this. Plus, he has all kinds of other issues with drugs and drinking and all that. And him and Yoko had a very, troubled marriage. But they came back together, and Yoko, I think, was in her 40s at this point. So it was almost kind of a miracle that Yoko was able to give birth to a child. And so, yeah, Sean Lennon is born. And yeah, John Lennon was, obviously a big name in music, putting out, Plastic Ono Band, and Imagine was humongous in the early 70s, and then, like I said, New York Minute? I can't think of the name of that. Yeah, really terrible album. Then he did Walls and Bridges, and Mind Games, I thought was a really good album, actually. But yeah, and then he put out like a Bad Rock and Roll cover album. But yeah, he's going to take a pretty big break here in music, which is crazy because he's still like in the prime of his career. I mean, you see what Paul's doing at this time period as well, putting out some big albums. And yeah, not till later that John decides to come back into music later in the 70s, but yeah. November 10th, Sex Pistols played their first concert in London. Yeah, so Sex Pistols has an interesting career, to say the least. A lot of crazy stuff happens with that band, which I'm going to talk about in the future because I'm kind of somewhat interested in what happens to them. Obviously, they're a crazy kind of punk rock band. It really is one of the big first original like punk rock bands out there. I believe it's them that has the like something about the Bollocks or something. I forget the name of the album, but it's a crazy album. Anyways, yeah, so more to come from them. December 6th, The Who, no, I don't even know what I'm saying. The Who set the record, but I didn't say what they set the record for, but I have that in my notes. They set some kind of record here on December 6th. Could be for maybe attendance at a concert or something like that. And then last, December 25th, Christmas Day, bassist Steve Harris forms Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden, I'm not familiar with them too much, not a big fan, but I know there's a bunch of huge Iron Maiden fans out there. I think my friend Briar is, maybe Nick is as well. One of the huge pillars of like heavy metal. But yeah, it gets formed this year in 75. So see what happens to them in the future. So that's the big events that happen this year. And I'll also end on artists that debuted albums this year that kind of go on. Ambrosia, which if you don't know Ambrosia, they had a couple of really good yacht rock songs later on. I heard one of their albums is pretty good. Crystal Gale, country music star, and she had a lot of good stuff. I'm not a big country music person, but she has this one great song, Don't You Make My Brown Eyes Blue or something like that. It's really good. And she's also a famous sister. Her sister, she's famous. Her sister is also famous, I think, country singer, if I remember right. Eddie Rabbitt, also, great name, Eddie Rabbitt. Journey, yeah, big band though, mostly known for the 80s, but I think in the 70s they were more of this like more of a hard rock band, and then they don't get more into the soft rock until 80, and 81's their big album, Escape, anyways. But Rainbow, as I mentioned, big heavy metal band at this time, and also Ted Nugent, known for his guitar playing and Catch Scratch Fever, anyways, all debuted this year in 75. So hopefully that covers, in a short amount of time, in under 30 minutes, kind of what happened this year in 75, a little over 50 years ago now. We're getting to the 50th anniversary next year in 76, I guess. Interesting enough. And yeah, hopefully you learned something, and feel free to comment what do you think about 1975 and your favorite albums that came out that year, and anything I missed. Anyways, let me know. Besides that, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for hitting the like button, and I appreciate all my subscribers for supporting the channel. I thank you so much.